So welcome to everybody who is here. The session will be recorded, so we will upload it onto YouTube. So don't worry about having to note, take, and get everything down, because we'll share all of this up on YouTube. So you'll be able to come back and reference it. But just to introduce myself quickly, I'm Kentse Radebe, and I'm a project manager in the Systems Justice Innovation Portfolio. And I'm joined by my colleague, Rowan, and I'll give Rowan a chance to introduce himself.
I'm Rowan. I've been involved in this project for, I think this is my 5th year now, including the year that I participated. I lecture at UCT and I do some economic development consulting, and I work with the innovative finance team as well as the wonderful systems innovation team at Bertha. It was great to be here.
Thanks, Rowan. So thank you so much for joining us. You either probably saw this post on LinkedIn or on our Twitter. And what we're really here to do today is just to share some background information on Map the System and just outline what the process actually looks like from now till middle of next year when the finals actually take place, but also to answer any other questions that you guys have. So from like forming a team, what topic to select. And we're actually very fortunate because Rowan participated in this competition. So he has like the inside track to be able to give you some really good insights. But if you have any questions, drop them in the chat, or you can raise your hand and then Rowan and I will just pause and answer any questions that you have. But just to kick us off and give an overview, oh, this is a picture with the famous picture with Rowan. There he is, right in the middle.
Right in the center. It was originally called the Global Challenge, and this was in 2017. We got to go to the stage there at Oxford and present on the Nelson Mandela lit stage, which is an odd one all the way up there, but it was cool. Had a bit of links to home, and you can see me in the very, very center there with brown pants, looking a far less pandemic affected. Let's call it that. But honestly, going to Oxford and having that experience and meeting people there, I'm still in touch with so many of those people, and in fact, I'm working with one of them at the moment. So it was just the most awesome experience to be able to be on that stage and meeting such awesome people. So yeah, I think that's why we have the picture in there, just to give that little intro of. And we had so much fun.
No, that's brilliant. But for today, we're just going to give an overview of the competition, as Rowan and I mentioned, talk a little bit about systems and what we mean by that. But don't worry, you don't have to know all of this right now, because we are going to have workshop sessions at the beginning of 2022. We're going to talk about registration. We're also then going to touch base on any of the important dates that you need to know and what you need to do to pull together a submission for the final portfolio. But just as some background context, so Map the System is a competition that's run in collaboration with Skoll, as well as Oxford Business School. And the idea about how they've brought this together is to really encourage students at universities to start applying systems thinking to a lot of the socioeconomic challenges that we're having in the world. So I think a lot of times whenever we talk about Map the System, because we're based at the Graduate School of Business and at Bertha, people think it's just for entrepreneurs. So it's not just for entrepreneurs, it's for anybody who's thinking about a particular social problem, whether it's in health, whether it's in education, and you're trying to understand how you can tackle it differently. And the process and the journey that you'll be walking with us, because you're going to get to know Rowan and I very well, is to basically arm you with the tools. And that's all the systems thinking elements. We're going to have workshops. So there's going to be a booklet that you guys will have access to. And we'll also find alternative ways to engage with you on this content, so that you can put together basically a research project. Does that sound about right, Rowan? Yeah, like almost like a research project-esque, yeah, if you want to think about it that way. Yeah, where you apply a systems lens to that work to try and understand the challenge. And what the competition really does is to help you refine your own thinking about the particular topic or area that you're focused on. And the idea really isn't necessarily that we're going to, get to this endpoint. I think what's really exciting about Map the System, whenever we talk with other educators or, the team that's based at Oxford, it's really just the process also of participating in this competition. I think, Rowan, you were highlighting just the journey that you walked and the relationships that you built with everyone during this process. That was a real highlight. So in that broad sense, it's really different from the other kinds of competitions that we have at UCT that focus on, having a really great pitch deck and, trying to solve an entrepreneurial issue, but really thinking about any of the kinds of social challenges that we're facing here in South Africa and on the continent that could really, really use a different way of understanding and unpacking them. broadly, that's what Map the System is. And I don't know, Rowan, if you can maybe drop a link in the chat box to the website for Map the System, because I think that'll also give you more information around the vision that the team has for putting this together. And then in terms of system thinking, so today I'm just going to give you a really quick overview, but I don't want you to get too caught up in this aspect, but it's a really important aspect of the competition and why we bring you together. It's this notion of applying systems thinking. So earlier I said to you guys that I'm based within the systems portfolio at Bertha Centre. And what that means is that a lot of the work that we do, whether we're working with organizations or teams, is that we're trying to embed a systems lens or a system approach into our work. And what that often means is really a particular way of viewing or understanding the world. And I've got a definition here from Danila Meadows, who's one of like the preeminent scholars of systems thinking globally. And what she argues for is that we need to move away from understanding social challenges in this linear way. For most of us, who had an opportunity to go to university, we tend to, get taught in a particular way about understanding the world. And what this competition urges us to do is to move away from thinking in silos, but actually zooming out to understand the systems that we operate in. A lot of the work that I do is also in health. So for example, it would be to move away from thinking that if we bring in one kind of an intervention, it's going to be the silver bullet to solve all of the health challenges that we have, whether it's the NHI, whether it's, a treatment program for mothers living in rural areas. But this notion of saying, well, what are the other different players and stakeholders? What are the relationships that they have to each other? And what would it mean to actually think of an intervention or a challenge or a solution that actually connects all of these different elements together? So that's what systems thinking really is about. And I've hijacked, you'll see it on the right of your screen. This is a graph from Forum from the Future that they've actually put together to try and explain how you can think about systems thinking in a way that's a little bit more pragmatic. So it's this notion that actually we have, and I'm starting at the center here, so systems practices. So what are the shifts that we are creating on a day-to-day basis to create systems change? So a lot of the work that I'll do will be working with teams, thinking about how do we enable systems capability. So thinking about collaboration, thinking about the assumptions that we have about ecosystems and challenging those assumptions, working at different levels within a system, thinking about not just at one particular aspect, but thinking about how does that aspect or node connect with another node within the system. And then we move up a little bit and think about the processes of systems change. And what we mean by that is thinking about actually being able to do and engage in systemic diagnosis. So being able to use systems tools to then understand how a system operates. So some of the workshops that we'll be doing with you will be to apply some of these systems tools so that you can actually do that in your own work. And then ultimately, the final aspect is thinking about systems change as an outcome. So this final circle really is think about what kind of change do we want to create in the world. So these are the really bigger goals. And a lot of the work that we do, even though we're working in our own sectors and our own fields, but it's to speak to this notion that if I do this, how does that ultimately positively impact and change the world? So that's what we mean when we talk about systems thinking in a really broad way. But I think I want to bring in Rowan here because you have a lot of, I suppose, background experience having worked on this project for as long as you have, since its inception, actually, which is really great to then speak about, well, how do we do that and bring it into like a practical level, especially around then forming a team and moving from that stage to selecting a topic and then submitting your portfolio.
Awesome. Thanks, Kentse. So just to add into what Kentse said there, and it's really cool stuff around systems things. But one of the philosophies around the competition was the idea that a lot of startup-y competitions or social entrepreneurship competitions always focused on the solution. They focused like, right, here's a solution straight up, and this is why our solution is the best, and this is the only thing that's going to fix everything, as Kentse said. And what this competition does differently, you spend probably 80% of your time not even thinking about the solutions, or your solution. You start with deeply understanding the problem and the system that you're looking at, interviewing people. Desktop research can be part of it, but desktop research is only a component. You go and chat to people, you go and chat to everyone that's affected by the system or is involved in the system, and then you go and look at existing solutions. What's there? What's currently happening? What's happening overseas with this sort of project? What's happening in different countries? And then you bring it all together into what are your lessons and levers. And what was interesting with our project, for example, was so we put together a team of 3 of us, 2 of them very close friends of mine, and we worked on community safety, and we really wanted to understand that. We actually came from a project where we kind of just come up with an idea to fix community safety, which was like an alert bracelet. And as we actually, this competition is what shifted our thinking, because an alert bracelet, like as a team, we thought that idea was perfect. But what we didn't realize is that the entire system of community safety itself was broken, or is still broken. And that is everything from communication between different parties to the sharing of resources to the availability of even things like street lighting in certain areas can really impact community safety. And what we ended up doing with a lot of our research was not actually going and building a physical device, because we realized that wouldn't change the system. But we took off all of our research and we presented it to the South African Police Services in the Western Cape. We presented it to some startups that were working in the space. We presented it to some local government people. And some of the things were implemented. Some of the things, a lot of the things not. But the learning that comes from that means that you can then, find ways and more gaps and more little spaces to have an impact. We call them lessons and levers, because the levers is like, if you pull this thing slightly, this thing will be entirely benefited by it. So small changes that can have big impacts on the system. And so coming to finding a team, now the team that I formed, we were actually, it was very odd. We were sitting having breakfast the one morning. We were just reflecting over some of the news of incidents of community violence and incidents of 2 rapes and murders that had taken place that were in the news. And we were kind of at that stage. We were like, how does this problem still exist? I mean, since I'd moved to South Africa in 2004, we knew about these sorts of things, and in 2017, these sorts of things had maybe even gotten worse. And so what we did is we were like, well, we all care about this. Let's go and dive into that. So there's one way of finding a team, which is just people that are passionate about it in the same way that you are. People that are passionate about an issue, people that are in an organization with you, or are colleagues, or even if you find somebody. We had some really cool groups formed last year where people had never met before, but they were passionate about the same issue. So teams can be from one person. One person technically counts as a team, but you can do it individually, all the way up to 5 people in a team. Though we'd recommend having 2 or 3, just because with systems thinking, it's really good to be able to bounce your ideas off people. But we'll be here if you do decide to end up, if you do enter individually, we will be here as well to bounce ideas off. What we also have set up, and I think one of the people on this call has actually filled it out. Precious, you got a question there? One of the people have already filled out is we've got a list of people looking for teams, and what will happen is that right up until into January, there'll be people that fill that out about issues they might be passionate about, and then we will pair you guys together or introduce you to each other. Interestingly, out of the top 3 teams from last year, 2 of the teams were formed like this. So that's really cool, is that you don't have to be with people that you've directly worked with before. If you're focused on fixing the same systemic issues, then you can work really well together and get really successful results. So yeah, finding a team, either find people that you get along with, or people that are passionate about the same issue, or fill out the form that we send out and we will add you to a team or introduce you to people. There's another thing to note though, actually, and this is quite cool from the way the competition is set up, is that only the team lead needs to be registered by the deadline on the 31st of January. So for example, if you've decided that you want to enter the competition in, let's say, something around rural health, you can register, and then when you start interviewing people, you come across a change maker in the space and you can add them to your team. So it is flexible in that, though you do have to enter before the date. And you can add people on later on. So you could say, right, as Rowan's team, I'm going to add these 2 people that I found in the ecosystem because they're doing incredible work. The one thing that you do have to have is that you do have to have one person in the team that is either a currently registered UCT student or an alumni from the last 2 years. What we did have is a lot of people that signed up on the looking for a teammate thing were not necessarily people who fitted that description, but there were a lot of UCT students that were looking for people that were outside of UCT to join them. So it works out quite serendipitously like that. We've got a question actually from Precious around how do you work around the issue of ethics. So with this sort of thing, it's not a formal academic study. It's a sort of systems mapping and systems conversation. And so allowing any participants you chat to know that beforehand. There are some things, if you're looking, some guidelines in terms of, there's some details on the website about like how you should conduct your research. If it is a topic that does require a letter saying that, you're part of this competition so that you can speak to people, we can do that. We don't go through the entire ethics process, the formal academic one, because this isn't a formal academic competition. So in the same way with entrepreneurs, an entrepreneur will interview a whole bunch of users, you can consider this a systems entrepreneurship type project. So you will interview people, you'll discuss them within reason, and then it's always good to anonymize a lot of the results unless you get permission from the person that you are asking. But that's pretty much it on finding a team. I don't know if any of the participants have any questions. So selecting a topic, as I said, we selected a topic of community safety. And to be 100% honest with you, before that little breakfast chat that we had, we'd never thought about community safety. Our backgrounds were in engineering, accounting, and finance. So, selecting a topic doesn't have to be anything that you've studied or anything that you're directly in line with. The thing that I think is the most important thing for selecting a topic is that you're passionate about it and that it's something that works at a systems level. So we've had some people that have done really cool work, but for example, like they submitted for their project like an app design. And that's really cool. I'm not, you can have an app design, which is awesome, but you're not really taking a systems lens to what you're trying to solve. So in terms of selecting a project, select something that can be done at a systems level. And you'll learn this as we go into our workshops next year. But one of the important things around analyzing a system is putting a boundary on it. So we looked at community safety within Cape Town. You can look at it as a regional boundary. You can look at it as an industry boundary. So you could look at, for example, something along the lines of like doctors working in rural this or something along those lines. And then in terms of when you choose your topic, the competition is built with the knowledge that topics change when you get more information. So our original topic submission that we submitted was designing a device for community safety. And then our actual end project was like, don't use a device. It's not going to do anything to help the system. And that's really important part of that knowledge. Like you're learning a lot by that. So, you could even go into a system and think like within community safety, for example, we realized a lot of it had little to do with community safety per se, like in terms of reactions to things, but more around things like street lighting and communication and stuff like that. And so your projects can evolve and change. And what is important is that you just sort of put something down when you're signing up, so that we know where you start and which field you're in and what sort of support we might need to pull in to help. If we need to have a speaker come in, if everyone ends up on similar topics, then we can have a speaker come in or whatever it might be. But yeah, what you're passionate about, something that works at a systems level, and just set a boundary for yourself, because there's a even if you're looking at something like climate change, it's a global thing, but you can look at it within a specific system if need be as well. So that's it on choosing a topic. Are there any questions on choosing a topic?
I think maybe the one thing that I'll say, Rowan, if there's any questions, is for anybody who is maybe doing their honors thesis or doing their master's thesis, this would also be a great opportunity to actually explore that topic in a different way. Because I think we've had teams in the past who've come in with, I'm doing this anyway, so let me actually see if I can merge it with this. And that's also been really exciting, because then for them, they get to see their research topic or area in a really different way. So we definitely encourage those entries as well. Even if you're not sure if it'll make sense, or as Zoran said, if it'll change down the line, but having that background also, we found for those teams to be really, really helpful. So absolutely, any kind of background work that you have beyond just even your own passion will definitely be relevant in this case. And this is just the logistics of how to enter. And I think Rowan covered a lot of this when you were just chatting a little bit earlier. But just to re-emphasize that, as Rowan said, you can enter as an individual or a team. And I think, Rowan, what we'll do also, because we're going to share this on YouTube, we'll drop the Google form link for those who are looking for teams so that you can actually find people and we can bring you together. But again, Rowan emphasized this, but you can either be a current student or recent graduate. So there's a lot of flexibility around that as well. And I think one of the most exciting things that we did do last year was we also had individuals from different universities who were also participating. So you might have, friends or somebody that you know in a different institution. As long as we do have one UCT student represented in the team, then it's a yay to bring in some of that diversity as well. So that was really great. And then again, you can be at undergraduate, diploma, postgraduate, or doctoral level. So don't worry about feeling like, oh, maybe I'm too advanced or I'm not advanced enough. This is a competition that's really, really flexible. And it's almost acknowledging that some people, everybody who comes into the space might have a certain level of systems thinking, but it's the journey that we're going to take you on so that you get to that final submission. And then I think there was also a note here that if you're a non-student, you can join from another institution as long as there is one student or recent graduate. So that's great. And then registration deadline is the 31st of January. 2022. So as Rowan said, and I think we emphasize this a lot for the last couple of years, is to say, even if maybe you don't have a final topic selected, you don't have a final team, or you're sitting on the fence of, will I, won't I, get your name into that registration so that even if you do change your mind later, at least we have it and we've captured it, because then we can't accept you after the deadline has actually passed. So even right now, you can go on, fill in the information, as much as you can based on where you are now, so that we can have that information. And then if you decide later that you want to change your topic or you want to bring in different team members, then there is that flexibility. And then I think the link is the one that Rowan dropped in the chat box a little bit earlier. So that's great. But before we move in here, are there any questions around how to enter and any more clarity that you would like from us around this process? Precious, I think your hand is raised. Go ahead.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Precious.
Okay. So I'm a student at GCT. I'm interested of being part of the mapping the social system for next year. So I wanted to know that can I actually enroll now, and preferably working alone? Do you guys kind of support a research where I work alone in that particular research?
Yes, so Precious, you can enter by yourself. And what's going to happen is next year, after the registration deadline closes, Rowan and I are going to share some dates for when we'll be doing, hopefully maybe we can have some face-to-face, but last year we hosted them online workshops. And what those workshops will do is you'll sort of come in maybe with your topic or your research area that you want to explore, and then we'll actually walk with you on the journey to then developing that a little bit further, asking you questions, maybe connecting you with other resources that we think will be really helpful and useful for you, or individuals that you can interview, so that you can actually develop that research to be much more comprehensive. So even if you feel like you're just a lone soldier, don't worry about that. You can get started and get working. And within the workshop process and the connections that we might have, whether it's to other individuals or resources, we'll definitely try to assist you in pulling that together.
And as Kentse said, we're here to support you for all of that. We have such fun sessions with the workshops. They're even better in person, but it's really cool to just connect, and we share ideas and ways you can do things or explore things. So we've got a lot of that support. And then, as always, on the process, like while you're doing your research, if you come across someone you want to add to your team, you can also do that. So yeah.
Thank you for the clarity on that. So, second question, I would like to know if maybe I want to do the research, let's say perhaps in KZN or in Joburg. Is that feasible enough?
Oh yes, definitely. We've had teams. So one of the teams last year, for example, did homelessness in Cape Town, and they were a team made up that was completely formed uh, on the sort of sign up process. But we've had studies from Mauritius. We've had people doing work on migration from the Congo. We've had people doing things from Zimbabwe. One of the big projects from a couple of years ago was on rural and township sanitation, specifically menstrual sanitation. And so you can do it on any topic in any region. The winners from the year that I was there, the team that came second, they lived in the US, but they did a research project in Uganda. And so, and the cool thing, I have to say, it's one of the cool things about everything having gone remote is that you can very much interview, 20 people in Uganda without even having to leave your bedroom. So yeah, you can do your research topic on whatever area you want.
What's really interesting about what you were saying, Rowan, is it also reminded me, I don't know if it was last year or the previous year, some of the questions that the judges were asking at the finals in Oxford was around how connected you are to that work. So for some people, it's, they did an internship in that region, and then some of the challenges that they saw stayed with them and they want to continue with that work in XYZ. So I think it will be great to also think about wherever you're doing your research, if you have an opportunity to actually take it forward or expand on it, how would you do that? Because I think part of the work that the competition is trying to sort of inculcate is this notion of, yes, we're interested in solving these challenges and we're not just doing it for the sake of the competition. So that aspect also comes through in your work. So whatever topic or area that you want to focus in, it'll be great if it has those connections and those links. Okay, so then I think that leads us nearly to the end. So this is just a picture, but here's a timeline that we're looking at for 2022. And obviously, I think we have to add this caveat because everything is always up in the air during this time, and with COVID, us not being able to anticipate what will happen. Because I think the last 2 years we've had these challenges of not being able to travel. But in 2022, Map the System, they've decided they'd really like it to be face-to-face. So we're all planning for a face-to-face global final. But in the run-up to that, these are the dates that you need to know that will be relevant for you. So we open up registrations beginning of November. We close on the 31st of January. 2022. So that's right even before you come back onto campus. So that's why I think Rowan's encouragement of just get yourself registered is absolutely critical. And then between January and April, so this is when we'll be hosting the online workshops. Rowan also is amazing because he opens up a WhatsApp group for all the different participants, so everybody can ask questions. So there's really opportunity to just engage and learn and really get into your topic. So that does give you a bit of time. But I think, again, once we get into like the scope of work, being able, if you have a team, you can actually distribute and share some of that load. Then the first submission is due on the 4th of April. And then Rowan and I will give feedback because then we'll have our local. So for us, it will be the UCT leg of the competition between the 5th and the 22nd of April. And then from that from that leg of the race, we will select the team that will go on to actually represent UCT at the global finals. And that information will all be shared before the 27th of April. And then the global finals, they haven't selected an exact date, but the sort of time period that they've given us is early May to mid-June. And that should give teams enough time to then sort out their travel, sort out their accommodation and visa arrangements. And we're fortunate that because we're at the Bertha Centre, the team that does make it to the global finals will be supported in that journey to then getting to Oxford. So we're really crossing fingers that COVID respects us and we'll be able to get a team to Oxford.
That trip to Oxford would be like, I'd be so keen for our teams to go there again. There's something so special, and being supported by the Bertha Centre for that is just, it's a magical experience. So let's hold fingers that we don't have any more flavors of COVID going out.
And then, so in between that, so after you've submitted the final submission and when you actually present, so for that winning team, there will be opportunities to actually refine that proposal. So we also have a really great marketing team within Bertha that will connect you with like a graphic designer to be able to actually pull your presentation together, have really good infographics so by the time you get to Oxford, your presentation is like a 10 out of 10. And then the actual finals will take place on the 8th. Oh, okay, there we go. Global final, the logistics is between early May and mid-June, and then the actual finals is 18th of June. So forgive me, I got that wrong earlier. So then we have actually got a final date. So that's the timeline that we're working with for 2022. They did, the competition organizers did share that actually it might shift or change, but for now, these are the dates that we're working with. For us today, the most important one is the 31st of January, just to ensure that your registration is submitted and we have you in the system, and then we can begin engaging with you, sharing materials, letting you know about workshops and any other information that you'll need to actually submit your final submission. And then I think that's it. But I think, Rowan, the one thing maybe we didn't touch on before we get to questions is just what the final submission will entail, because I think it is really good to have a sense of that, so that you know how much prep work there might be involved in that process.
Perfect. I can touch on that now. So we'd encourage, if you've got an idea like Precious has and you want to go forward with it, we'd encourage you starting now. You can start your conversations. You can start looking at systems resources. The website's really good with resources. You'll go on there. There's a whole bunch of documents to read and videos to see. In terms of what your submission looks like is, so you register before the 31st of January, and then you'll work on your project up until April. Your submission will be 3 things. The first one is a systems mapping, and that's a system map that you can draw out. We'll teach you how to draw those systems maps, so don't panic, but there are all sorts of resources available online for that. The second is a sort of written part to describing the problem, to communicating everything that goes on. The written part can take multiple different forms though, which is quite cool. So we've seen some people do the written parts in PowerPoints. We've seen people do the written parts just as a document. For us, we did ours all as an infographic. So I put on a design hat and made it look all pretty and that sort of stuff. And then the third piece is a bibliography that includes your interview list. So the bibliography just of all the sources you've used, and then an interview list that'll be like who you've spoken to and what organizations they're from. So the actual submission takes all of your work and condenses it down into really, really neat packages of a map, a written submission, and your bibliography. And then if you are chosen for the UCT round, so we'll usually choose the top 5 teams, and the top 5 teams will then do a 5 to 10 minute presentation. It was 5 minutes last year because I think there was one year that was a bit shorter, but we'll let you know that close to the time. And you'll do a presentation to a panel of judges. We're going to get some cool judges in. I am very much convinced that we will drag Nadisa back in because she's not allowed to leave this competition. She was one of the leads in the competition a little while ago, but she's not allowed to leave. She's going to come back and judge and speak for us. And then we'll have this this UCT round where you'll pitch a presentation, the top 5 teams, and then the number 1 that gets selected today gets that all expenses paid trip to Oxford, which is a really, really exciting thing. And then you'll go and present there again. So that's what the submission formats look like. It does sound like a lot of work, but at the same time, it can be a real journey that you go through, and the submissions are more there to capture your journey. So I don't want people to get super scared about, I think there's a word limit of 3,000 words. And actually, Precious, for somebody like you that has done psychology and anthropology, 3,000 words is like a tweet for you guys. It's like a tiny little nugget of writing. But yeah, that's what you do to put it together. And I think that's it from my side.
Yeah. And I think what's really great about what we did last year is we tried to stagger the workshops to help participants actually work through the final submission so that it's not one final big thing that you have to put together. So we'll do like the systems mapping together. And then the writing component is more you and the team, but we're trying to stagger those workshops so that you keep up to date with the actual process, or by the time the final submission deadline comes through, it's not one big chunk of work that you have to submit. So yeah, I think that's also a good way of working. So
I love that Precious just said, yeah, 3,000 words means you can get the final submission out in an hour. Shoot. coming from commerce, we can't write like that. It's one of the things that I'm so jealous about, having like not had the pleasure of being in humanities, is that my writing skills, you can ask the lit review that I did this weekend. It's not as quick. On that note, are there any questions from our participants here? Anything at all? We're here to answer for the next couple of minutes.
I'm not seeing any hands raised. Oh, Andrea.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. So, I mean, I don't know if I'm in the right place even. I saw this and I thought, because there's an idea that I have that I think could have legs, and it may be the way to get it to have legs through this this competition. But I'd obviously need someone who's a recent student to be interested or involved, because I'm a very old alumnus. And yeah, so in terms of the systems thinking, I don't know if it applies, in which case I might be, barking up the wrong tree, which I'm happy for you to tell me. So maybe I was just tell you what the idea is. And
dive in.
So basically, it's around looking at employment and a different way of addressing unemployment by getting. So how I came up with the idea, sorry, so I did that. It was through the Bertha Centre, that Coursera course.
That Coursera course is beautiful.
Amazing.
It's wonderful. So it was through that I started thinking about it. That research that they've done, which shows that, if you show people one, say, sick orphan in Ethiopia, it tugs at their heartstrings and they'll give a certain amount of money. But as soon as you show the sick orphan and her brother, they give less. And then when you show the whole village of children, they give even less. And, so there's something about, I can't remember what the term for it is, but about people's response to an individual as opposed to the magnitude of a big, if they see it as such a big problem, they feel like overwhelmed and their desire to give diminishes. So my idea is to try and get South Africans to give more to address unemployment by identifying a single unemployed person who has, fallen through the cracks of the education/training system because they didn't have the opportunities because they were just born unlucky. And so if you could say, okay, this is a person who actually could have gotten a matric and could qualify to be whatever, but they don't have the funds to get that training. And if you can get a person who has the money to sponsor them, to identify them, then so that's where my app idea comes in.
So, what's interesting about that is that there's actually, I've seen, crowdfunding platforms that work with that and everything. But what's cool about that is that you could take a systems angle on that and say, right, we know we have this problem and there's all of these little things that influence it. Things like, lack of access to resources, or as Precious was saying, institute sort of systems of violence and things like that. And what you can do is take a step back and go and unpack all of that, and then see what the lessons or levers are to do that. Like where is the easiest point to help influence the system. And so you can use this project as a way of like understanding the systematic issues that create that one person and helping communicate those issues across, and then finding ways to leverage and solve that. And so what I think would be a great idea is if there's a student from UCT that comes through that is passionate about employment, we'll link them up with you. And we actually found one of the most amazing things. We had a guy last year called Sam Voss, and Sam he was the CEO of U-Turn Homeless Ministries. So quite involved in the homeless area, and he was, but he wasn't a student, and he got partnered with a second year UCT student who had no experience on that side, but was quite good at the research things. And they ended up coming second overall and getting some funding for their idea. And so I definitely think, you're looking at something that as much as it'll affect an individual, which is part of what you're saying there is an entire system that breeds that. And if you can find tiny ways to leverage that and then find ways of communicating that, I think that's awesome. And I think it can be so impactful. I mean, my idea started with an app or a device and then became a whole systems project that went across to Oxford. So it's definitely something that fits nicely with the competition.
Okay, cool. That's great. And I'll wait to see if someone is interested.
You can start diving in now. Like start researching, start looking at the systems lens stuff. There's some really, really cool things there. And then we'll try and match you up at the same time there. So I think that could be really cool.
So you say the website, is that the Bertha website? Where am I going researching?
So I'm going to drop the link again. It's slightly further up in the chat. So it's mapthesystem.sbs. And what you can start off by doing is just go and look at the resources there. So spend some time reading the resources, go and look up what systems mapping looks like, and take your idea. And so what we do a lot in the space is you sort of plot out your initial thinking around it. So this is what you think the system looks like. And then you go and you interview people that are involved in that. So maybe you could go to an organization like Harambe, and Harambe help unemployed youth find jobs. And you could say to them, what are the parts of the system that are, affecting that you guys are struggling with, or whatever it might be. So in terms of that research, dive into the resources and then see how you can start applying your thinking on there.
And I think maybe, Andrea, what also might be helpful, on that website, there's all the other teams that have presented at previous competitions, because that really gives you a better sense of, okay, so this is where I'm actually going to end up at the end of this process.
Yeah. Great. I will have a look. Thank you very much.
Awesome. We have a question here from Precious.
Hello.
Yeah, he can hear you.
Okay. I love the aspect of the previous speaker that was speaking about unemployment. I was thinking of my research as well, my research interest. As she says, she's looking for a partner. I think it will be an interesting aspect actually to explore, because when looking at structural violence, unemployment is one of the factors that contribute to the high prevalence of teenage pregnancy, so many aspects. Now I'll email Kentse and then, yeah.
That's awesome.
I think that's cool.
Andrea and Precious, we can introduce you, and just email us. I'll drop. Kentse, do you want to drop your email there? My UCT email is just not working at the moment. So Kentse's going to just drop her email there, and we'll pay you up, and or at least just have a conversation about where your different perspectives is. And as we said, some of the best teams that we've had in this competition are people that have got entirely different perspectives, and it's what makes them understand the system so well. So Kentse's just dropped her email there, and we'll match you guys up for a conversation. I think that could be really cool.
Awesome.
Wonderful.
So I think we've probably come to the end of our session for this evening. So this will be uploaded, as we mentioned earlier, onto YouTube, and we will share all the relevant links in the description box. So for anybody who's watching, you can just go there. If you're looking to be matched up with a team, there's going to be a link there onto a Google Sheet. We'll also drop the general Bertha Centre email if you do have any additional questions, to get hooked up with either Rowan or myself. And then we'll also share the link for the registration form to go directly onto the Map the System website and get yourself registered. And if you already have team members, then you can also get them registered as well before the 31st of January 2022. But for tonight, I think we can probably bring it to a close. So thank you very much, Rowan, and thank you to everybody who joined us. And we're really looking forward to working and collaborating with you all.
Thanks so much, Kentse, and thanks everyone else.